guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is actually quite exciting for me. It's something that I've been really looking forward to doing for a while, and I'm going to be testing out the Crayola colour pencils. So as you guys know, I use a lot of colour pencil. They're probably my favourite medium to actually work in, and so I use quite a lot of the expensive brands like Prismacolor, Faber Castell and Caran Luminance. So I thought today I'd actually try out one of the cheaper ones, and by cheap I mean really cheap, and see how they compare, whether they work as well, and whether it's actually worth paying more for the expensive coloured pencils, or whether you can get away with making decent drawings with the cheaper ones. So what I'm going to be testing out is the Crayola 24 pack, and these only cost me £2, so they were like half price. So like I said, extremely cheap. So let's have a look at how these guys compare to other colour pencils. Okay, so I didn't use too many different art materials for this. I just used a mechanical pencil to mark out the sketch, a few sharpeners obviously to sharpen the pencils, the colour pencils themselves. This was the 24 pack, so there was a few of each type of colour, which was nice, so I had more of a range to work with. And I also used the Bristol paper by Strathmore and had a really smooth surface, but let's get on with it. So the first thing that I did was I sharpened all of the pencils because they were quite blunt, and the first thing that I noticed straight away is that the wood casing is really cheap, and so a lot of it did break off, and there was a lot of breakage when I first tried to sharpen all of these, and throughout the actual drawing they kept breaking and I kept having to resharpen them, and so it wear down the pencil really quickly. There was only a few that actually sharpened pretty nicely. So to start with, I just wanted to get a feel for the pencils, so I tried a couple of things out. I just wanted to see how the pencil actually laid down on the paper, and I thought it was quite nice. I got a quite even coverage and it was nice and opaque, and I just wanted to see how sort of thick or thin the lines was, and again you could get a nice sharp sort of line with this pencil, so it would be good for detail. I also wanted to see how dark the black actually was, and that was fine. I was happy with that, and I also wanted to see how a few of the colours would layer and blend together, and when I did this I could tell that I would have problems layering and actually blending out the colours. I felt like I could already tell that one colour would be fine. You know, if you're doing blocked colours and you just wanted to use one layer and burnish it, you could get a nice finish. But if you try to mix lots of different colours together and blend them, it's not as creamy as the other pencils, like the more expensive brands, so it's going to be harder to get a nice smooth finish and actually build up lots of layers. It didn't take a lot of layers. So I decided to work on a rose, and I did a multicoloured sort of rainbow rose so that I could try all of the different colours. So now I want to go through some of the positives and the negatives of these colour pencils and the things that I found when I did this test and coloured in this rose. So let's start with the positives, and the very first thing, which is probably the most obvious thing that's really good about these pencils, is the price. They are really cheap, coming in at £2. You know, even if you don't like them, you're not wasting that much money. It's not a massive investment for you. So they are great for the price. And you can get the larger sets as well if you want more colours. But again, if you want cheaper pencils and you're not really doing too much colour pencil work, you just want them, say if you're doing adult colouring books and you want to colour them in with colour pencils, then these are probably really good for you. Another positive for these pencils is that you can actually get some pretty decent results, but you have to try really hard to get those nice results. So I did find this more of a challenge rather than a test, because I felt like I really had to push myself in order to get something that I liked at the end. But it's not impossible to get really nice results with these pencils and nice drawings. But obviously the results aren't going to be as good as, say, if you're using the £200 pencils. So the next thing that I really liked about this was the range of colours in the set. Even though it was a small set, only 24 pencils, I did feel like I had a nice range of the colours. I never felt like I didn't have the colour that I was looking for. I could add other colours. Even though they didn't layer well and didn't mix well, I still felt like I could get the colours that I wanted. It just might not be that smooth. And lastly, another thing that I liked about this was you can get some layering. It doesn't do too much layering, it don't handle layering that well, but you can get a couple of layers in there if you wanted to mix a couple of colours. But if you wanted to mix like 5 colours on top of each other, it starts to get difficult. But for cheap pencils, you can get a decent amount of layering and blending, considering they are £2. And the final thing that I thought was really good about these is that the pencil does hold its point really well. So like some of the softer pencils which can kind of wear down the point quite easily and you have to keep resharpening them, these pencils actually held that sharp point pretty well, and so I didn't have to sharpen them that much, thank God, otherwise they would have all kept breaking. So those are the positives. Now let's talk about some of the more negative things or not so good things about these pencils. So like I mentioned earlier, firstly, they don't sharpen evenly. Quite a lot of the time the wood casing splits, and even when I used one of my more expensive sharpeners, they still don't sharpen really nice. The wood is cheap, so you don't get that smooth finish. And again, they keep breaking, especially when burnishing. When you apply a lot of pressure to these pencils, they just snap, they just break. The wooden casing isn't strong and isn't like adhered to the pencil like other more expensive coloured pencils are, so they do break a lot easier. And if you were to drop the pencil, then the core lead is a lot more likely to be shattered all the way through than an expensive pencil. So even though they may seem cheaper, you have to sharpen it a lot to get it to a point where you've got a pencil that won't just break off. I had to sharpen the white so much because it kept breaking that I pretty much went halfway down that pencil by the end. So even though they're cheaper, they're not good quality, so you waste a lot of the pencil. So another thing that I didn't really like about these is that the colours don't really layer and blend smoothly, like I've mentioned. So when I wanted to blend a lot of the colours together, because it was like a multicoloured flower, and especially on the petal that I'm doing now, you really can tell that they don't blend nicely. And if I wanted to add a little black and then blend that out, it wouldn't really blend very nicely because the pencil leads aren't creamy. And this is similar to the Faber Castell Polychromos because those two aren't really creamy. You can't blend it out as smoothly, but these were just really bad at blending. You can't get a smooth finish even though I was using really smooth paper. It was okay, but it wasn't great. But to be fair, I didn't expect anything more from these pencils for the price. So one thing that I was disappointed with is that the colours wasn't really rich and vibrant and as dark as I thought they'd be. Like some of the darker colours, like the darker blues, didn't actually come out as dark when I put them to the paper. So what I found was I had to use the black quite a lot to actually darken up all of the different colours. And I don't really like using dark black too much because it doesn't give you as much of a natural finish as if you were to use the dark blue with the blue petals. So I felt that I had to use the black in order to get it as dark as it needed to go, because the other colours, even though they looked dark on the actual pencil, they didn't come out like they were supposed to. And so that was a bit of a shame for me because I felt like I couldn't get those really dark, intense tones and they weren't that pigmented. So another thing that I really didn't like about these was the white pencil. So the white pencil is so important when you're doing coloured pencil work because you use it so much to blend and lighten up colours, and I use it all the time. And this white pencil didn't really do anything. When I applied it to blend and burnish it, like blended them and softened them a bit and it lightened them a tiny bit, but it was hardly any difference. So it was pretty pointless, and what it meant was it limited you from applying more layers. So it basically didn't do anything and add anything to the drawing, but it did prevent you from being able to add more layers. So the white pencil, I really didn't like it. It wasn't good at all. So if you do want to use these pencils, I recommend getting a different white pencil. The one I like is the Caran Luminance over any other white coloured pencils. So they were basically the main positives and negatives. Another thing that I have to mention is obviously cheap Crayola pencils aren't going to have really high light fastness ratings, which means that if you were to sell your work, then they're not going to be archival. They're not going to last. The colours might fade over time. And so if you're like intending to sell your work, I really do recommend going for the higher artist quality coloured pencils. Okay, so overall, are these coloured pencils worth it? Would I recommend them? So the only thing I would really recommend them for is if you want to do like colouring books like I mentioned. I feel like if you have never tried coloured pencils and you try these as your first like set to judge coloured pencil, the medium on, then you're not really experiencing coloured pencils, because this was like I was working in a whole different medium. But Anyway guys, that is it for that test. I just want to mention that I've got a brand new tutorial series on Patreon where I go through how to figure out what to include in your sketch outline, how to pick colours for your coloured pencil drawings, and also how to choose the paper for your drawings, as well as loads of other tutorial series for portraits and also animal drawings in coloured pencil, graphite, watercolours and all of that sort of stuff. So I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check that out. Anyway guys, that is it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you're new around here, why not hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on my future videos. But I will see you guys in the next one. Bye everybody!